Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Lori J Journals. It's Lori and I'm here with you today despite the scratchy, stuffy voice that I have as I'm getting over a bit of a cold. So excuse me for not sounding myself, but I wanted to make sure I tuned in today because I'm super excited to share week 3 of the Savage Stitches Challenge, which is the challenge we are doing in the Savageart Group on Facebook. And we have been challenging members to use stitching in their makes every week during the course of July, during the month of July. So we are on week 3. And today, I'm actually going to split this video into 2 because I'm going to show you kind of 2 different versions of a similar, dare I say, technique. I don't want to sound like I have something really high level to share with you. But what I'm going to do is what I call Frankenstein stitching. And the reason I call it that is because, and here's an example right here. This is a journal that I'm currently working on. This is slow stitching by hand. And you can see that it's not done with precision and special technique. It's really just embroidery thread that I've taken with a needle and slow stitched in kind of a scrappy, random way, bringing pieces of fabric together. And you can tell they're not sewn real tight. There's a lot of, let me untie this so that you can see. There's space in between. It's not meant to seal it all with perfect stitching like you would if you were sewing a garment. It's meant to look scrappy and fun as an embellishment for a journal cover or a pocket or anything else that you would like to do with it. So what you see here are pieces of similar fabrics, and I do want to call out that these fabrics are from, most of them, with the exception of this fuchsia piece here, are from the Brooklyn haberdashery, which I did an unboxing video a few weeks ago. I really was not as familiar with this shop as I now am, now that I've received products from them. I really love them. Brooklyn represents Brooklyn, New York. It's not as I thought earlier that Brooklyn was the name of a person. The founders are not Brooklyn. They're 2 other people, and I've shared those in that unboxing video description. But I absolutely love their products. They source what they hope to be fair trade, sustainable, really great products. And everything that I've gotten from there so far, I love. And these pieces that I've selected are from some of those products in my unboxing, which I will link in the description box down below. So I thought, since I cut pieces apart for this journal cover that I worked on, that I would use some of the remaining pieces to do the make here for the group, okay? And this piece right here, as I mentioned, is a little bit more like a sari silk or serape, that's not the right word. Forgive me. I cannot think of what this fabric is called, but it's like a silky, almost like taffeta kind of material. And these pieces are all left over from this make, which is why I thought it would be a good way to use them up and to show you this method. Method is a better word to describe, because again, I don't know that I'm using any kind of fancy technique that would be considered technical. And again, it's going to look amateur. I like the way it looks. I haven't done any formal training on embroidery or any kind of sewing since I was in middle school. But what I have done is watch a lot of creators on YouTube. I've been introduced to several of them in fodder school, and I've found styles that I really like. And in most cases, at least when it comes to sewing, I have not watched or taken any tutorials. I have simply looked at creations by these artists and then tried to figure out on my own, with my own skill set, how I could mimic that. So I should just do a little bit of a shout out, because lately most of my stitching inspiration has come from B. Henry, which is Brooke Henry, and she's on Instagram and has her own website and all the things. And the other is Robin Marie from Robin's Nest, and same thing. She has Instagram. This is where I find a lot of my inspiration is on Instagram. And then that leads me to YouTube channels and websites and all those things. So I will at the very least provide information on both those creators in my description box by way of their Instagram handle or some other means. Okay? So that aside, let's talk about Frankensteining. And I call it this, and really I should tell you that my first Frankensteining is really paper, and that's what I'm going to show you in the other part of the video. I actually was using my Frankenstein method on paper before I even started with fabric, but then I decided that it would be fun to apply to the fabric as well. So all you need to do is select scraps of fabric that you have that you want to put together. And you'll see, you might, if you saw each of these pieces separately, you might have not put them together. I'm not looking to be super matchy. I'm looking for that kind of eclectic, maybe a little bit of a boho kind of look, I've heard people call it. And then you want to create with those pieces of fabric a shape that you want to sew them into. Okay. And it's not important that they're really close together. Like if I wanted to build this out more, I could stretch them out and put more space in between them. But I find that if you spread them out too much, you're really wishing you had another piece of fabric in there. So what I've done is I've created a fairly tight rectangle, knowing that once I start sewing the pieces, this rectangle might not look as exact as it does right now. And I'm totally okay with that, okay? I don't know what I'm going to do with this yet, so I don't have a specific purpose lined up. But then I'll have a nice Frankenstein fabric throw together to put on the cover. Maybe I'll put on the back of that same journal I just showed you. So moving right along, what I've done is, and I'm going to try really hard not to belabor this. Sometimes it can take a little bit long, but I don't want it to be a really long video. I've taken black embroidery thread, a pretty long piece, and it's up to you how long. Like I don't measure it. I just take a nice good size, hoping that it'll be my whole project. But to be honest, if I run out, I just knot it and I start another one. It's really not a big deal because a lot of that will be hidden behind your piece. So that's the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to knot the end and probably do it 2 or 3 times, just so that once I start sewing, I don't pull all the way through. I did that 3 times and I think that's enough. I'm going to trim off the end a little bit closer just so that it doesn't hang too long. And then the next thing I'm going to do is be really careful and spread my embroidery thread out. I've said this on multiple videos. I don't know why, but I have a tendency to get my embroidery thread knotted. That happens to me. I'm not sure why. Okay. All right. So where you start is totally up to you. Because really what you're looking to do is just close all of the open edges. You could stitch all the way around the outside. I generally don't do that. I don't feel the need to do that. It will make it feel more contained, I guess, if you want it that way, but I don't want to do that. I'm really just looking to loosely stitch the pieces together so that they're one piece that I can lay over something else. So I'm going to start here at the bottom, and notice I am stitching from the underneath side. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want that knot to stay in the back, okay? And then I've done this a couple of different ways. I find that if you go over on one fabric and under on the other, that it makes a really cool stitch. So I came from under here, so I'm going to go over here. And forgive me if there are like real craft terms for these things that I don't have, because, you know, sometimes I go on these lives and I'm just sharing my process and somebody tells me that there's an actual name for the thing that I didn't even know about. So, all right. So I've gone, and let me stop and tell you one other thing. Sometimes I'm in the middle of doing this and I don't even remember which direction I went in. and I don't really care because it just looks scrappy and fun, and I'm not trying to really do anything all that fancy. So now I'm going to go back through front to back on this one. So I've switched. And here we go with those knots. So you want to watch. That's the trouble of having it too long too. All right. So I went back to front, front to back. And now, sorry, this is difficult to do on camera because usually playing around and manipulating as I go. Okay, so this is coming through the back here. So now I'm going to come back to front. And there we go with all the extra. Okay, now the other thing I do while I'm doing this is I'm constantly playing with how tight the thread is, because I don't want to pull it super tight. I want to see the loose stitching. You may find that you want it different. I really like the way it looks when you do that. When it looks like kind of like shoelaces and it's open and loose. I like that. So I'm going to continue doing that. Whoops. And again, I lost track of where I was, so. And this is the part that's hard about being on camera with this because, you know, it's not a real smooth looking process. Also a little warm, so I'm going to take my jacket off. Okay. And I find that when I'm talking, I often forget which direction I was going in. So I may have switched it up. And I told you, it doesn't really matter to me, because as long as I get a stitch that attaches these, I don't even really care how formal or exact it looks. One of the fun things about this whole process is how kind of scrappy and amateurish it looks, for lack of a better way of describing it. The other thing that's fun about it is, at least for me, is I don't feel the need for all of my fabrics to align like in a perfect, like you'll see this one's going to come down a little bit lower than this one here. And that doesn't bother me. I actually like it. I think it looks cool. I like the, kind of the way I like scrappy pieces of fabric. I like this too. I like that kind of random, not perfect look. Okay, so I've now gotten to the point where these two pieces are aligned. And I have, oh my goodness, I knocked everything. Okay, I think it was supposed to go like this. Okay, so I have the choice of whether I move up in this direction and over like this, or whether I go over here and up here. And again, I had some knots in the back of this one. You can't even see them because this whole thing was affixed onto this journal. So you don't know about those little knots that are happening on the underside. So if you're not worried about it, you know, don't worry about it. Don't let yourself be worried about what others will, because they won't see it. Okay, let me just, all right, having some knots there. All right, so I've decided I'm going to go up in this direction. There's no like true method to my madness. I just go with what I feel like doing at the time. And right now, this is what I feel like doing. This is what's the direction I'm going in, knowing that I'm going to have to come back down around this other side. Totally okay. And again, you never want to pull this stuff too tight, because you can always tighten the strings, but I shouldn't say you never want to. I never want to. I like that kind of loose look. So I'm being careful not to pull things too tight. My pieces of fabric won't make a perfect rectangle. So if I try to pull everything too tight to form a perfect rectangle, it's not going to happen. So I'm trying to create that loose look where I can make it look pieced together and not like I tried to make it real tight and couldn't do it. All right. Okay, so I'm looking here, and again, I'm making these decisions as I go, so sometimes I don't make the best decision. I think, oh, I should have gone that way or that way, but now I've gotten to where I'm up to the top of here, and I'd actually really like to go straight across here, and I've created a situation where I can't do that. So I have a choice of either I can go into the back of this piece and leave a line across the back of thread, which wouldn't be such a bad thing, and then go across, or I can knot it and keep going. And I think what I've decided to do is show you that it's okay to have thread on the back. So watch. So I've taken this thread from here and threaded all the way in the back. Now, some people who are like really into sewing might tell you that's not okay, right? It's not the right way to sew or whatever, but I don't care. This is what I call Frankensteining. And the reason I call it that is because you've seen those stitches on Frankenstein. It's really just all about messy stitching, hand stitching it together so that you get a fun kind of hand stitched look to your work. So I'm going to keep going. And all the while I'm checking how tight I pull, right? Because what I don't want to do is pull it too tight and get myself cinched up. Now, let me stop for a moment and mention something. If you are the type of person who can't, or I shouldn't say can't, who you don't deal well with imperfection, or you really have a hard time doing this haphazardly without knowing how it's going to turn out, you can certainly take like a piece of deli paper and lightly dab a bit of glue of each of your pieces so they're set the way you want it, stitch it all, and then peel the deli paper away. I just don't do that because I'm not overly concerned about the perfection and I don't want to waste the deli paper. But it's certainly an option if you feel more comfortable knowing that, you know, the exact shape that you want to put things in. And again, I'm stopping after every stitch to make sure I really like the positioning. I don't want to pull things too tight. Ugh, and I just pulled my thread right out of the needle. So now I have to rethread it, and I will. And I invite you to be okay with the imperfection. If it's something that you struggle with, see if you can let loose and have a little fun doing things a little bit differently, a little haphazardly. And I can tell you right now, I want to pull this because I don't like how close, I don't want the stitching so tight. And now I'm going to go right into this piece so I can bring it across, and I'm going to do this loosely and be very careful that I don't pull all of the fabric super close together, because I don't want that. Okay, and let's go back in here. Oh, I got myself knotted. Okay. Knotted up there. I'm just doing a status check from other angles. And I'm thinking about how some people would be really unhappy with this right now, because it doesn't look like something that's ordered and perfect. And that's okay. I mean, if this isn't for you, it's all right. You can do a more planned out stitching where you decide exactly where all of your stitches are going to go. And then go from there. I like the fun of winging it. I just do. I'm just trying to figure out what's going to go next here. I'm going to go here. You can always come back and add stitching if there are places where you want it to connect more securely. And if you really want to, you can make X's instead of these loose open stitches. See, and now I can take it back down here if I want and make sure that there's a connection between these pieces. And I think I'm going to do that because I think if I go down here, I can work my way back up, and I think I'll get a cool little X out of it. So let's try this, see if this works. See, and I got a little nice little crisscross there. I can bring this back into this piece. Make sure I connect this side together. Oh, let's see what happened here. Okay. All right. So far, this is actually pulled even a little bit tighter than what I had anticipated and hoped for. Okay. So now I have these, I think this was the way it was when I started, these two pieces. And I have to figure out what makes sense. So if I want to go straight across, oh, forgive the light problem. I just lost one of my lights. The battery died. And I'm just kind of continuing on the over-under thing. Really, I'm just going with whatever hits me in the moment. And this gets cute little shoelace look going on. And I'm going to be able to take this straight across and hopefully not have to get another piece of thread. Let's see what happens. I think I might just make it. And I don't need, remember, I'm not sewing this together so that, like a piece of clothing or something where it needs a really secure connection. This is really just about creating a fun patchwork. So I'm going to reduce the number. I'm not going to put so many stitches so that I can make sure I can finish it. And I probably need another one over here. Let's see. Right, so it's all pretty well connected except for right here. I might be able to get a stitch in from the back. I'm gonna try. Don't yell at me, you experienced seamstresses who are looking at me like, what is she doing? This is not expert sewing technique here by any means. Just the opposite, actually. It's amateur hour with Lori. Okay, but I made it all the way through on a single thread, which is what I was really trying to do. Okay, and then so from the underneath, I just need to create another knot, and that's what I'm going to do. Keeping in mind, it's not going to be hard to get this stuff to stay together, especially if you're going to sew it or glue it down onto another surface. It's basically just a fabric collage that you'll use to embellish something else. So having a little trouble with the knot here because the ends of the embroidery thread are fraying, but I think I got it. And that knot will get hidden behind the scenes, so it's really okay. All right, so here's my Frankenstein. Now, I've noticed here that, I sewed this a little tighter. I'm going to cut this piece off because I feel like it's a little too, not that it has to be exact, but it was a little too wide. And now I've got a nice rectangle, sloppy sewn rectangle that I can embellish onto a journal. Like, I'm not going to use it on this one, but just here, well, it's a little bigger. Yeah. I don't have one handy that's the right size, but I will take the back of this one that I showed you in the beginning. I could put this on the back here, right? It's got some lint on it. I've got to clean off some hairs that I can, but I could put that one on the back here. I could also make a pocket, right? I could back another piece of fabric on it, or just use as a pocket itself. It probably would, some things would get hung up on it. But the idea is you can, if you do not have a sewing machine and you have embroidery thread and some scrap pieces of fabric, you can Frankenstein them together like this. And again, if it's important to you that you have exact stitching, just instead of doing the kooky amateur stitching that I did, you can certainly do a much more planned out, edge to edge, clean sewing method. I happen to think that this looks fun, and I think it adds character to the journal. So right there you have slow stitching. I'm going to show you my Frankenstein paper, which is, I'm sure other people do it, but that is a method that I created myself. So in the next video, you will see stitched Frankenstein paper. And then for the challenge, for the Savage Stitches 3 challenge, you will stitch together scraps, either scraps of fabric or scraps of paper, and you can use hand stitching or sewing machine to create an embellishment, basically a fabric or paper sewn collage that you can use for a journal cover, for an embellishment, and I'll even show you what I do with my Frankenstein paper in the next video. So remember to hashtag your posts with Savage Stitches 3 because it's week 3, and we look forward to seeing all your creations.